By 1983, the video game crash was in full effect. I was still playing my Atari 2600, ColecoVision, Intellivision. I even dabbled into some Commodore 64 with games like Raid on Bungling Bay and Impossible Mission. By 1985, there was rumor of a new system launching to resurrect the video game market. It was marketed as an entertainment system with a cool robot, some pack-in games, and no one thought that it would be a success. Of course, that was the Nintendo Entertainment System, and here is where this video begins. Because just a year later, I saw a commercial for something that would change my gaming life forever. It was something brand new. It was a challenger to Nintendo. Something unique. The adult version of Nintendo to my preteen eyes.
Sega challenges you with the ultimate video game, the Sega Master System.
Hang on!
With more accurate control, more detailed graphics, more levels of play.
Awesome!
The Sega Master System comes with power-based 2 control pads, light phaser, and 2 great video games, Hang On and Safari Hunt.
Gotcha!
And with other games like Rambo, Outrun, and Choplifter, the excitement never stops.
After seeing this commercial, I knew I had to have a Sega Master System. I'd never seen graphics like that before. I've never seen the games that they were showing off, and it just looked completely cool to me. It was, again, the adult version of consoles for me at that time. And I want to talk about the games that define that generation for me on the Sega Master System. What games pulled me in, kept me there for the entirety of that generation. Not that I didn't have a Nintendo Entertainment System, but at that time, I loved Sega and the Master System. The first 2 games were actually pack-ins that came with the system. We're going to talk about those in this video, which is going to be my Sega Master System Retrospective. Yeah. So again, I took my system home. The first package was Hang On and Safari Hunt. Safari Hunt was the answer to Duck Hunt. It was much more mature. You had a cool phaser-looking gun that was black with red accents, and it was just, again, to my preteen eyes, the adult version of a light gun game. And it showed off a lot of the colors and a lot of the variation that you got, the difference that you had when you had a Sega Master System over the Nintendo Entertainment System. Of course, Duck Hunt was the better game, but at that time, you couldn't tell me otherwise, because this game was the best light gun game you could possibly play, not only because it came with the system, but because it had that Sega name attached to it. Of course, the big standout in this package was Hang On. What was unbelievable to my eyes was that you could play this arcade game in your home, and to me there was no difference. This was just incredible. I had gotten used to going to the arcade and playing those really great Yu Suzuki arcade games. He even created a version of Hang On that had an actual motorcycle that you sat on and you can lean to the left and lean to the right. It was unbelievable. Everyone wanted to play that game, and here I was in my house in front of my super high definition CRT television back in the day, playing this version of a game on a system like the Sega Master System. You couldn't get this anywhere else, and this was definitely not a Nintendo Entertainment System. I remember spending hours upon hours trying to beat my track time, trying to get to the next level. There was always somebody popping up in the way, causing me to crash. I was always pushing the bike to the limit, trying to make those turns, skidding off into the grass. It was an unbelievable experience, and it was definitely something that I felt was next generation. You couldn't get this anywhere else. Sega had started to cement themselves into my brain as being the system for the adult gamer, for the mature gamer, for people who want realism, and things were about to get even better with the next few games that I'm going to talk about. Now, I know what you're saying. I just said mature and realistic, and here we are talking about Fantasy Zone. But this was the hook. You had realism, like Hang On, and then you had these really cool fantasy type games. So to my preteen eyes, again, I was making every excuse to be a Sega fanatic. So this game was developed in the arcades in 1986 by Sega, and it's the first game in the Phantasy Zone series. It was ported to a bunch of different consoles, but when it came to the Master System, I had to have it. You control someone called Opa Opa, who, curiously enough, became sort of the unofficial mascot for Sega in the early days. It's a typical traditional scrolling shooter, but what was really cool about this is that in between levels, you can choose to spend points that you got on upgrades to Opa Opa. So you could choose whether or not you would have certain abilities versus other abilities and then use them in the next level. And it gave me that sense of having control over a game, not just going on a journey, but actually being able to sort of passively have some sort of input in what I was doing, or actively have an input in picking out these different upgrades for Opa Opa. And again, the great sound that came out of the Master System, those great soundtracks, this was one that I find myself humming repeatedly over and over and over again, even to this day. Once again, in 1986, here's a game that completely blew me away. And another curious fact, Yuji Naka, the creator of Sonic the Hedgehog, worked on a lot of early games, and this was one of them for Sega and the Master System. Black Belt, side-scrolling, single-player beat-em-up game, and it came out again in 1986 on the Master System. This one is pretty straightforward, but again, the idea of getting the jumps down right, timing the attacks, getting those power-ups as they passed by over the screen. I remember sitting down and playing this game for hours and then getting to the bosses and trying to learn their patterns over and over and over again. I had that kind of patience back then. Right now, I wouldn't be able to do it, but I loved this game when it came out, and it was a progression for me. So I started off with Safari Hunt, and I started off with Hang On. Then I went to Phantasy Zone, and then I'm getting Black Belt. The games kept coming. They were the mature games for mature gamers. How crazy was I back then as a kid, looking for reasons to sort of have a Sega over a Nintendo when I had both in the house. But there was just something about having a different system than everyone else had. Everyone was talking about Nintendo, and they loved Nintendo, and rightfully so. But the Master System just had these games that I needed to play. Black Belt, again, very simplistic, left to right, side scroller. Most of the games back then were like this. But I promise you, if you play this one, it's very addicting, jumping up, getting that power up, a great soundtrack, great fun. I spent hours playing this game. Absolutely incredible. Another great Master System gem. This one is the game that I played probably the most. Pro wrestling on the Master System. Another fact that you may have not known is this is the only pro wrestling game to ever come to the Sega Master System. And again, 1986, what a great year to be a Master System owner. This game, my brother and I played endlessly. We actually created backstories for the great mask men that you see fighting right here, the one in the green and the one in the pink mask. This was the most fun wrestling game that I have ever played, even to this day. We had so much fun. We would have tournaments. We would have fake WWF. Yes, WWF, before that Wildlife Foundation decided that they wanted their name back. We would have fake WWF wrestling matches. We had leagues. This was just an unbelievably great wrestling game. I think it's probably one of the purest and most fun wrestling games that I've ever played, and I think it's unmatched. I really do. The music, going outside of the ring, the music changes, and there's always that one chair just sitting right there waiting for you to pick up, take it back into the ring. I can't tell you how many times we fought over who got back into the ring quickest. They count you out. Unbelievable, unbelievable great time with pro wrestling on the Master System. 1987 saw the release of one of the greatest role-playing games ever on the Sega Master System, Phantasy Star. Another interesting fact about this game is that all the characters have predefined personalities and abilities. That was completely unique when you compare it to other RPGs of the era that gave you customizable characters. So story was so central to this game, and it was truly a journey. Designer Kotaro Hayoshida and programmer Yuji Naka, they formed a team and they wanted Phantasy Star to be a unique RPG experience. So they added elements like 3D dungeon crawling, a female protagonist, and ample animation. And when I saw that 3D dungeon crawling in the advertisement for this game, I was completely blown away. I've never seen anything like that before when I saw it. It was unbelievable. Actual 3D on my Master System. It looked like I was walking through a tunnel, walking down a hallway, and then instantly plunged into a fight. It was unbelievable. The game was a fusion between medieval fantasy and science fiction, and another interesting fact is it was inspired by Star Wars. When you look back at Phantasy Star, it's a landmark RPG. Not only did it use a science fantasy setting, but again, that use of predetermined characters had never been done before. You were always given a choice. You can mix and match. They gave you a character that was fully fleshed out. They had their own abilities, and everything about them was already set from the start of the game, completely unique to other RPGs at the time. Another curious fact is that this game came out 2 days after Final Fantasy arrived for the Famicom. So this game stood up to Final Fantasy, and many people felt that this game was much better than that first Final Fantasy game, including myself. The use of 3D, the characters, the writing, the science fantasy setting, everything was so unique and so fresh. I remember playing this for the first time, and I remember seeing this hallway where you walk down completely blew my mind at the time. You couldn't get anything like this on any other console. This was the future to my eyes back then, and seeing it now brings a smile to my face. Any game in the 80s had to feature a robot that transformed, and this one was no different. Transbot, I loved this game. It came out in 1985. It was a side-scrolling shooter for 1 or 2 players. You control CA-214, a starfighter that can transform into a robot. The Transbot. So essentially, it's impossible. The game features only 2 levels, and beating the boss loops the game. You start out with the first level, default gun, but you can collect symbols, and you can choose a new weapon to use based on each choice. So you have 6 choices. They scroll past at the top of the screen, and the Transbot will be powered with whatever selection they make. Power-up weapons will only last until all of the ammo is exhausted, which will cause Transbot to reverse to the basic weapon. This one I've spent hours with, only because, again, in the 80s, anything and everything that transformed was cool. And no matter how many times it transformed back and forth into the same thing, you can watch it for hours. And that's what I did here. I loved the Transbot. I loved getting all the collectibles. I loved getting all of the transformations and using all of the new weapons. And to me, this was just another one of those classic Sega-esque games. You couldn't get this anywhere else. I absolutely loved this game. And I'm telling you, it is so addicting for some reason. I don't know what it is about these shooters from left to right. Simplistic scrolling, but there's something about that twitch effect of shooting everything on the screen, weaving and dodging. It just never gets old. It's almost like the basic form of gameplay that you just never forget and never get tired of. And this is one of those games that, again, on the Master System, unbelievable. I had a great time playing this game, and I couldn't get anything like this on the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was just solidifying the fact that the Master System was a system to have. Next up was Ghost House. Another fun fact, this game was loosely based on Sega's 1982 arcade game Monster Bash. You control a character called Mick, a young vampire hunter out to destroy 5 vampires. You have to jump or punch on your enemies to defeat them. It's a classic character action / platformer beat 'em up game, and it's incredibly fun to play. You start the game with 3 lives and receive an additional life every 50,000 and 150,000 points. You also have an energy meter, but you'll lose energy if you touch any of the monsters that you run into. But you can also gain energy by collecting treasures scattered throughout the mansion. And of course, it's restored when you kill one of the 5 Draculas. Now, you couldn't sneeze in the 80s without talking about the Ghostbusters, and this game came to a number of platforms, but on the Master System it just felt great, simply because it was a Sega system, right? So, you're charged with setting up a Ghostbusters franchise in a city whose psychokinetic energy levels have begun to rise. When the player moves to a flashing block, the game shifts to an overhead street view, and they must drive to the site attempting to vacuum up stray ghosts if the vehicle is equipped to do so. Now once you reach that site, you have to maneuver 2 Ghostbusters to guide Slimer ghosts into position to be drawn into a trap. If you're successful in doing that, you're rewarded money, but each failure causes the PK energy level to jump and incapacitates one of the player's 3 team member characters. Now looking back, I have to be honest, this sold solely on the name Ghostbusters. Everyone wanted to be a Ghostbuster. It was one of the biggest and best movies of the 80s, and again, a licensed game based on a movie usually never does well. Think about E.T., but this one was fun. I liked the light RPG elements, I liked the idea of building up my franchise, and in between levels, again, much like Phantasy Zone, you can sort of upgrade your car and your equipment around the points that you earned while you're busting ghosts. But the next game is one of my absolute favorites, Space Harrier. Talk about a fast-paced rail shooter game in third-person perspective behind your player, set in an unreal, surreal world composed of brightly colored landscapes adorned with checkerboard-style ground and stationary objects such as trees and stone pillars. At the start of gameplay, you're greeted with a voice sample that says, "Welcome to the Fantasy Zone, get ready." In addition, you're also giving some voice prompts that say you're doing great when you successfully complete a stage. You're going to navigate a continuous series of 18 distinct stages while utilizing an underarm jet-propelled laser cannon that enables Harrier to simultaneously fly and shoot. Your objective here is simple. Simply destroy everything that comes at you on the screen. This game I played in the arcade over and over and over again. And again, it's one of those titles that I couldn't believe I was going to get and be able to play at home on my Master System. Unbelievable experience. Over and over and over again, I played this game trying to get to that next stage, fight that boss, move on. Just an unbelievable experience on a console. The Sega Master System was just the absolute best. I had so many great experiences, so many fond memories, great times with family and friends. This has been my Sega Master System retrospective video, the games that I identified with on the console that drew me in, the ones that I remember the most. Let me know what your memories are of the Sega Master System in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.